Like Mom Lenten Book Club. We are joined by author Samantha Stevenson as we read her new amazing book, The Bellbind Letters, Inside the Devil's Plan for Your Motherhood. I have just been engrossed in this book, and I hope you two readers have been as well. Samantha, I think without any ado, let's just jump into chapter
Okay,
7 so we
let's
can get
do
through
it.
all six. So
Yes.
chapter 7 or letter 7, because these are
Mhm.
letters between um, Boomslang and
Mhm.
Bellbind, is the two
Yes.
main characters from
Mhm.
your book, two demons, one in training. So Bellbind is in training. Boomslang is the master, we'll call him.
Yes.
In this letter, Boomslang is talking to Bellbind about how through our friendships or the lack of or the interest in having them and just the wryness that can happen.
Yes.
They can lead us astray. Tell
Mhm.
us more.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is the longest letter in the book, is this one on friendship. And I think it's really telling because it's so important. And also, I think it's especially, I think even more today than when C.S. Lewis originally wrote the Screw Tape Letters. It is a real struggle. It's very fraught with, I don't know, we have all of these sensitivities or tendencies to take things personally, take things the wrong way, take things in the worst way
Mm,
possible. Instead of St. Ignatius says, always presume the good. So
I love
no
that.
matter what somebody actually meant, just always presume the best version of what they said. I think that's a easy way, or maybe not easy, a simple way to go about treating people with grace and
I love that.
benefit of the doubt. I know I especially think, I hope people do that for me, because I don't mean to say the wrong thing or hurt people's feelings or use the wrong tone. And I've like shied away from speaking up in moments when I probably should have, because I was afraid to say the wrong thing. Um, and so I think if we were to just all approach with that, then we could give each other a little bit more grace and then be able to connect a little bit better.
Yeah, this chapter really touched my heart very deeply because for some reason, I have this tendency to be taken the wrong way,
Mm.
and really in the most negative way, and that hurts, I think, even deeper. In my desire, I think, to try to say the right thing or to do the right thing, and um, it gets confused and muddled, and I wish people would, instead of just assuming that's what I meant and taking it as the negative, I really wish they would say, like, just call me out on it, because then I could tell you right away, oh my goodness, that was like the furthest thing from my
Yeah.
mind. Like, I don't have a malice bone in my body.
Hmm.
It's so heartbreaking. But I do see that, quite honestly, as a spiritual warfare, as a spiritual
Hmm.
attack. Um, I have one of a very, very close friend. We had somebody try to kind of put a wedge between us. And we laugh now because we're no longer friends with that person.
Yeah.
But the things that the Lord has done in both of our lives to as friends would never have happened. And so I think sometimes that wedge, that misunderstanding, that nudge that makes you just upset with somebody before finding out the truth, I
Mhm.
do believe it has a lot to do with spiritual warfare.
Yeah, I think iron sharpens iron, and so anywhere where he can get in there and wedge between us, or like you said, take things the wrong way. And it would be great if people would speak up, but at the same time, like we're very, I especially am very conflict averse. So rather than say something, and my husband, he comes from a family where they speak up, and my family, like we vary the things. So he'll be like, well, why didn't you just say it like this? And it sounds so simple when he says it. I'm like, I just literally it didn't occur to me to say it that way. Or it didn't occur to me to bring, I didn't even think I could bring that up, because we just have these patterns of burying things. So yeah, like you said, if we could be the brave ones and bridge that topic and give people permission, to speak their hearts, and And even or perhaps especially when there is actually something wrong, because we're talking about misunderstandings, but sometimes in friendship, in order
Yeah.
to really connect and understand each other and have intimacy, we do have to go into those hard places. I know that there were, when we moved to from Southern California to Idaho, there were a lot of people who it was pretty sudden, and I mean, we had been thinking about it and praying about it as a couple and as a family for a while. But I think it hurts to be left behind or to be left out of that decision. And there were definitely some friendships that suffered as a result. I had one really, really lovely, beautiful friend who she she came to us and said, I'm so happy for you guys. I truly believe this is what God wanted, but the way that this happened hurt me. And because she said that, we were able to talk about it and have like
Mm.
a deeper intimacy and understanding. And she just brought her heart, she knew that we didn't want to hurt her. But it was important to be said so that we could have reconciliation. That's why we have that option in our church. And that's, I think, important in our relationships also.
It's definitely one of the tactics of the devil is this quiet, the silence, right? Like if you're having a communication, if you're having dialogue, then peace can be found. But if
Mhm.
we're not talking, then it just festers and gets worse, or the division just happens. I'm just going to invite those who are watching us live. I see we have a few of you with us. Please feel free at any time to put in a question for Samantha, or just share a part of the book, especially as we go through the chapters that touched your heart. I do have to make a true confession. I promised last week that I would go back and look at the old um, recording and go through the comments and if anybody had questions. And I just at this moment realized I didn't go back. So I'm going to make a note right now in my notebook to go back and check. And so I apologize if you're here for questions to be answered. And especially if you're here, the recording to come back.
Mhm.
By all means, please put them in there. If you're here tonight for had a question, just ask away. And I am putting a note right here. Comments, go back and look. And I apologize. See, now we can remain friends because I've apologized.
This letter also goes into the poison of gossip and
Mm,
the weapon of envy. I think envy is a really hard one because it also, these things, even the littlest instances of gossip, oh gosh, it can be so tempting, because I think gossip is really tempting because it's this deceptive invitation. The way it looks shiny is, it's like, oh, we could have this intimacy with this one friend, and we're sharing in this together, and we're being invited into this special relationship by talking about someone else. So it's appealing because it's a kind of intimacy, but it's a poisonous kind of intimacy. And
definitely.
um
And I had,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, no, I had, I talk and write a lot about these friendships that I had. There was 5 of us, and they left the Catholic faith, and I tried to remain friends, and um, it was just this kind of weird set of circumstances, and I think a lot of it had to do with not talking and not being able to share our hearts. But the real wedge came when I talked to one of the 4, and she took back what I said and twisted it. I don't think she meant, maybe she didn't mean to twist it. She did. We did talk, her and I did talk many, many years later. We had a very heart to heart talk, which was very interesting because what she had done to me that kind of took those friends out of my life. Later, one of the group did to her, and she was no longer part of the friend group. So it was just kind of interesting, like that ripple effect. But one of the point that I was like when I was reading this, I was thinking was friendships will break up whether you keep trying it. Like sometimes they're out of our control that we can't
Yeah.
fix them. And the one thing that I've been reading a lot about with God is that He will allow these things in our, like, doesn't bring them, but He will allow them, and
Mhm.
He will always use them for a greater good. And I think that's such a powerful lesson that the evil can have its way, and people can be fallen and hurt you, but know that God is going to use that for a greater good. And it was the falling apart of those friendships that led to me seeking out a career, for lack of a better word, in ministry, writing and speaking. um, because of some of the things that went on in that relationship there, where they left the faith and I didn't feel like I had the language. And
Yeah.
at the time, there wasn't good Catholic stuff to keep them. Anyway, so that's like the things. So as you're going through this breakup or this pain, think, I can't wait to see the greater good that God brings, and He will, because He promises that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I definitely relate to that. I have lost really my dearest childhood friend for sticking to the faith and holding convictions, and that was it's really hard. It's like a divorce. It's like
It,
tragic.
it is. It's been over 15 years, and if I run into them or if I drive by one of their houses, I still have a pang
Or you hear
because
the
there's still
wrong
a
song on the radio.
yes, it does feel like a breakup. And God filled my life with twice as many friends and um, different kind of friendships that are almost in some way, I hate to say this, like stronger and more authentic. There's a lot of struggle for me in those friendships. I think sometimes too, I don't know if you do this, Samantha, but you try really hard to hold on to something or someone, and it's just not the right fit for
Yeah.
you. It's not what God wants for you. Even though they're good people, they weren't the good people for you. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes that also brings a lot of heartache when you're trying to hold on to a friendship or relationship that's not meant for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Wish I'd learned that lesson in middle school.
Oh, I don't know. There's so many lessons in middle school. That's why it's so painful.
Yes. I
Um,
agreed.
my my I think my favorite part of this letter, or at least the part that hits closest to home for me, is on page 53, where he talks about exploiting fear of vulnerability.
Mm,
And it's, if none of the others ever lets, or if none lets the others know that she is in fact human, bearing the burdens of wrestling with her own particular circumstances, basically they're not a danger to themselves. Like, being real and being vulnerable, I love it when people are real and vulnerable with me. And I love being able to help them and bless them when they're going through it. I want to be that person, but I don't like to be the person who's vulnerable. I don't want to be the struggling person who needs help.
yes.
It's a real area of weakness for me is admitting when I need help, admitting when I am limited, like I messed up, I can't do it all. Like, I don't want people to see those parts.
No.
And if I give into that fear, and not reach out when I need somebody, then who's winning?
Exactly. The isolation, right? Like that's the dividing and the isolating is one of the devil's greatest tactics. We thank you so much for joining us tonight. I see you on here. If you have any questions or comments for Samantha, please, please, please feel free to type those right into the comments. They pop up for us and we can see them and respond to them. And we'd love to hear from you. We're so happy that you're here with us. Um, there's so much in here that just you talked about the gossip, and that's on page 54. And by these pale imitations, we can erode your patient's every good tendency whilst exacerbating some of the flightier female flaws that render them innocuous to the enemy's plans. In either case, you do well to encourage every manner of gossip, so potent a poison that only the smallest amounts are necessary to destroy entire networks of the enemy's friends. And that was my life right there. That's exactly what happened. You use very big words. It's hard to read them out loud. But it just describes it so beautifully. And I think the other thing about gossip is that, and I had other friendships destroyed by gossips because once you are the gossip and you're talking about somebody else, whether you realize it or not, you have destroyed that person you're gossiping to
Mhm.
ability to trust you.
Right. Because,
Because if you're, yeah, go ahead.
well, just if whatever you're saying to them, you're probably turning around and saying about them. Even if you're not, just the trust isn't there.
Right.
I had to learn that the hard way from being the person who was on the receiving end of someone in my life was saying, giving they're just really mired in gossip, and fell prey to like, oh, well, just listen to this, and this person must like me and trust me because they're sharing all of these things. And then I found out later I got a third party's, repeating the things that were being said about me behind my back, and like, well, shame on me for listening in the first place and for trusting that that wasn't going to happen to me, because yeah, it's painful.
It is. It is. And we think like I'm just venting and for the moment it feels good, but it never feels good for long. And it's okay to have a good trusted friend that you can share what's bothering you, but there's this
Right.
idea of sharing like what's on my heart, and then instead of sharing all the things that the other person does. I've gone to confession before and had the priest call me out. He's like, now can we hear your confession? Because you go and you tell them like I hear him gossiping to the priest, and he's like, "That's nice. How about your confession? I don't need their confession, your husband's or your friends or your, worst enemy." He's like, "No, no, that." And then there's this thing called detraction, which is
Just a second.
when
Sorry.
you it's okay when you're gossiping, but you're telling the truth, right? But it's not your truth to tell. Because some people will say, well, gossip's about lying and spreading untruths, and that's not completely true. Gossip is anytime you're talking about another person, but
Mm-hmm.
detraction is when
Yep.
it is the truth. It's just not your truth to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely destroys friendship. On the bottom of page 55, deep wounds have the potential not only to sever the nauseating bond of faithful friendship, which would be cause enough for rejoicing, but also to hollow out your patient, leaving her dry and brittle as a lifeless tree, ripe only to become the dwelling place of various insects who continue to devour it from the inside out until nothing is left but fodder for worms and the lowest of life forms that crawl the earth.
Yeah. That one I actually we had when I was living in California, we had a tree that was hollowed out in the backyard. We moved in and it was full of, but it wasn't quite as bad as this, but it was full of bees, and we had to have the tree taken out so that our
Oh,
kids
wow.
get attacked by the bees when we moved in. But just that image of that rotten tree kind of impressed itself into my brain. Um, but
It's a
I
good
I think that
imagery.
is like what happens to us um, when we become dry and brittle and a home for decay.
Yes. You also use the idea of imprisonment too. You do become kind
Mhm.
of imprisoned in that. Just one of the things about this book, we're reading the Bellbind letters, Inside the Devil's Plan for Your Motherhood with Samantha Stevenson, and from our Sunday Visitor. And the imagery that you use, I think, is one of the things I've enjoyed the most. I was teasing you about the big words that I can't pronounce, but it really is this. I feel like I'm reading um, C.S. Lewis. And the thing that's interesting when we first talked about friendship, and then we'll move to the next chapter, is that I think friendship has a different level of meaning to a woman than
Mm,
it does to a man. And where C.S. Lewis was writing, and it was about a
yeah.
man that was the patient, right?
Mhm.
I think there's this difference in a woman where friendship, I think this is a lot, we put a lot more weight on
Mhm.
friendships than I think men. And not like men don't like to have friendships, but I think it's very different for women. But that's just,
Yeah, no, I mean, women, John Paul II says this in his writing, Edith Stein too. I think women are just, our hearts are attentive to the personal in a special way. John Paul II actually said that fathers learn their fatherhood from watching the mother be a mother. And so I think you're spot on there with the way that relationships are just more, I don't know, more top of mind to our hearts in a special way. It's part of the special feminine giftedness, but then it stands to reason if that's part of our special giftedness, well, then that's going to be a special area of attack too.
yeah, yes, definitely. Like this is an important, very important part of our self worth. Even sometimes, of course, that's going to be a place that we
Mhm.
are attacked. All right, let's move on to the mass. And I tell a funny story. It's a true story. of how when I first reverted back to the faith, I was still very superficial. And I would go into mass and I grabbed the bulletin on my way in and I chit chat to everybody when I got there. And then during the readings, I would read the bulletin. Um, then during the homily, I'm sorry, no, during the homily, I would read the bulletin and then, no, anyway, then I would make, no, during the readings, I would read the bulletin. And then during the homily, I would make to-do lists. That's what I used to do. To-do lists and all over the homily. It made it look like I was like writing everything the homilist said. And then I would leave, I would receive communion and watch everybody else receive and like make all these mental notes in my head of why are they wearing that in church and how, I saw what she was doing last night. I cannot believe she's up there getting communion. This was like my true inner thought and dialogue. And then I would leave church, Samantha, and I would say, I didn't get a thing out of that. I wonder why, Allison. Like there wasn't any part of me that was involved, right? Like not part of me was paying attention. I was so distracted. It was ridiculous. So let's talk about the mass. What about this chapter?
Yeah, I have been in like a perpetual state of opportunity to grow in humility in taking my
Okay.
kids to mass for the last. It's getting better now. I say we turn a corner, so now Sunday is going to be really rough. But I think we have turned a corner of because my kids are basically 2 years or less apart, and I have four of them, and the oldest right now is 10. So we're like 3, 5, 7, 10. And so for a long time, going to mass with all the kids, I was like, I'm not paying attention either because I'm just on like manage the chaos mode. And so we forgot shoes this week and I forgot to bring the stuff to do. I brought stuff to do, but they're like, misbehaving with the stuff that we brought to entertain, just like continually trying to manage disasters and be distracted. And so I think that this was just like the fruit of praying with that constant invitation to humility, and understanding the purpose and the point of what it is that we're going there for. And I think also growing in humility and understanding Jesus is happy that we're there.
Mm-hmm.
Shoes are not. um, and so and also I had a great moment of prayer too that I wrote about actually for a reflection for Catholic Mom a while ago. But it was a day that everything went right at Mass and my kids were all behaved and it was going well. And I'm like, here, Jesus, look at what I brought you. And he's like, well, that's nice, but that's really more for you because I loved all the times you brought them when it was hard. I loved all the times that you were coming and it was the suffering. And especially too, because during that time I was going through a really difficult time of chronic illness and just exhaustion all the time. So, I mean, we would go to Mass and that would be it for me on a Sunday. Like I would go and then couched the rest of the day. My husband is
Wow.
in town, and he'd want to do errands afterwards. I'm like, you can go do the errands. I'm gonna sit in the car because that was too much for me. So that's like the background or the backdrop of writing about and understanding just this like hatred that the enemy has for the beauty that is
Mm.
Mass, for Jesus coming to us in the ordinary and making grace so available, just like pouring that out on us. And I don't know, yeah, the way that the enemy hates that is just makes it so clear how powerful and how beautiful it is.
I agree. Again, invite you if you're here watching live, or even if you come back later and you want to leave a message, a comment, a question. I would love to hear from you. Just put it right there in the comment section and we will see it pop up on here. One of the things I was thinking about when you were speaking was those moments where you have the kids everywhere and you're self-conscious of their behavior
Mm-hmm.
and you're already like sweating and like whatever, overwhelmed, and you just want them to behave and don't want them to be disruptive, and you get that side eye from somebody, and it just makes it so much worse. And I want to just tell people, please smile at
Mhm.
that mother. Let her know it's going to be okay. My friends and I have all kind of made this our like our goal in life. Never let a mother come to church and feel like she's not going to ever come back because she was embarrassed. Um, but you never know if it's their first time. If you never know what people are going through. I feel like we should never make anybody feel uncomfortable because you never know. Again, if that's their first time and you want them to come back. You never want somebody to come to church and feel uncomfortable. Like if you ever visited a church, it's for me, I can't have a gluten host. I need to have a low gluten host. And so I'm already very anxious when I get there. Like, how do I get that? Do they have that there? I always feel uncomfortable. So um, there's just so many things because, like you said, the devil doesn't want us there.
Yeah.
Obviously, like if all the places and all the things that we do, that's the number one place that he wants to keep us from. So
Yeah.
he will use all means, including other people's facial expressions, to keep us.
Thankfully, I mean, I have had those moments for sure, but they are far outweighed by the number of times that I've been at church. And this happens outside of church too, but it's happened more in church. I think because you're just with people for like a
Yeah.
whole hour, so long period of time, and people have come up so many times and said, even though I was not doing a good job, they've said, "You're doing a good job, mom.
Oh.
I'm glad you're here. Like, so great that you're here. You're doing a good job." And even if I'm feeling fine when they say that, I tear up. Like,
Oh.
I'm feeling like, oh, I'm good. I got it. Like, this wasn't that hard of a time. But they say that and I tear up. It's just, it means so much to have that encouragement. So
That's
that's
beautiful.
definitely could be a way that we're, distracted by the enemy to look at the crying baby or I mean, I always want to look at the baby just because I think they're cute. It's not because they're crying or whatever, but I try not to look because I know that being on the receiving end, they're going to think it's like a look and not just like, oh, I love your baby. Can I hold? But
That's funny. Well, speaking of babies and loving
mm-hmm,
babies,
mm-hmm.
let's talk about the next chapter, letter 9 on motherhood.
Yes. Yes.
And I think, by the way, you handled this subject just absolutely eloquently. But go on.
That's nice to hear. Um,
It's a tough subject to breach,
it is.
and you did it again eloquently, beautifully, sensitively.
It is. There's just like a contrast, I think, between what motherhood or what the culture tells us that motherhood should be and the way that I think that it's supposed to work in heaven's eyes. Um,
Mm.
so the whole chapter is just trying to point out the differences between this curated, Pinteresty, Instagrammable, I don't know, performance of motherhood versus those tiny, small moments that are really valuable when it comes to like when we're up in the middle of the night holding somebody's hair while they're throwing up. That is not something we want to see on Instagram, but that's really the moment of growth. That's a moment of holiness. That's a moment of very self-sacrificial love. Um, and so I tease my daughter because we had one of those middle of the night moments, and toddlers, just be a warning if you don't have them yet, when they don't know how to throw up or they've not thrown up before, they cough before they throw up. So if they start coughing, get out of the way. She threw up into my face, like into my mouth. I like,
Ugh.
into the shower. But that those moments, and then I think we spent the whole week just she was on my chest and we watched Dory, and I was supposed to do this really important stuff. I was a teacher at the time, and it was a big week at school, and I was supposed to be there for these particular field trips, and I had to miss the whole week. And I was so replaceable at work and so irreplaceable at home. And
Oh,
so I think that's just like the inversion of what really matters. And um, especially when we have to say what we are on like a piece of paper or something for women who don't work outside the home. It's like, oh, I'm just a mom, but there's no such thing, right, as
no.
just a mom. And I think moms who work too would say the job is secondary. Like the most important thing I do is for my kids.
I think there was just when Catherine O'Hara died, they aired an interview. Somebody came up to her, I think it was in an airport, and said, "Catherine, you've had such a storied career. What do you want to be remembered for? Which role do you want to be remembered for?" And she just looked at them and she's like, "Being a mom."
Mm.
And I thought that was just so powerful and so beautiful. Out of all of the things that Catherine got to do in her life, being a
Mhm.
mom was the one she wanted to be remembered for. And I love that that's like probably one of the last clips and we'll see of her, because that's what circulated in
Mhm.
her death. And I love that she will be remembered that way as a mom. That's
This is
really
off topic, but sort of on topic with deceased celebrities. But James Vanderbeek just recently passed away. And there's a great clip of him going around where he's talking. He passed away from cancer, and he's talking about having everything stripped away, even his identity. He got I'm an actor, can't do that anymore. I can't. They had a farm, like I can't do that anymore. I can't steward the land, can't even be father and husband, can't perform in those roles anymore. Basically all of that is stripped away. What am I'm the father's. I'm loved, and I'm worthy of love because I'm his. And
wow.
that's what he learned from cancer, and his experience, and that's what he wanted to leave the world with is, and if you know that I'm loved, you are loved in the same way just because you're the father's. It was, oh, that's so
That's
beautiful.
powerful. That's so beautiful. And I think that is, again, very countercultural. Like you start
Mhm.
the chapter by saying that's not what the culture looks for. It's not the propaganda, right?
Yeah.
That we get in the culture that being a parent is worthy. We know so often, sadly, women
Mhm.
and men who um, convince their wives or their girlfriends, whoever, to abort a child is just confused by this messaging that it's going to be an inconvenience or it's going to
Mhm.
stop them from living their dreams or that it's not a life yet.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's again some of the most saddest things I've seen in my lifetime of that language coming out, and that we
Yeah.
no longer protect children and babies for the vulnerable, precious little beings that they are.
Yeah. But those moms that come on reels or whatever, and they're witnessing to life and saying, everyone was telling me not to have this baby, and then they show a picture of their baby, they show a picture of their kid graduating from high school, like that was the best thing, that the best choice that they've done with their life. I mean, so brave. So first of all, to make the choice, and then second of all, to share and to continue to encourage other people to be able to keep their baby. And I think Father Mike Schmitz just recently on one of his homilies, he shared about a young woman who came to him and she was pregnant and she's like scared, and Father Mike, I'm not ready to be a mom. And he's looked at her and said, you already are a mom. And she said
Oh,
that was enough. That was enough for her to
wow.
have the strength to be courageous and keep her baby. So just keep sharing the beauty. I think we often are tempted to share the trials because there are a lot of trials. There are
Mm.
holy refining trials. But I think sharing the beautiful and the fact that even with all the trials, it doesn't even compare. Just keep
Right.
sharing the good and the beautiful. It's important.
Amen. And if you happen to be listening and you're somebody who has made that decision in a younger time of your life, in a difficult time in your life, know that God's merciful love covers all of that, and He can heal that wound. He can heal that hurt. And you don't need to be shameful. You don't need to be. You just come to the Father and who you are, whose you are, and He will love you through it. Much healing in that. With Rachel's
Yes.
Vineyard, I really love that ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else on this chapter on motherhood before we?
Just on page 66, just to deepen the idea of what are the values, just to set up the contrast, that the world pushes us to productivity over relationship, accolades over service, acquisition over generosity, admiration over love, and achievement over dependence. Um, I think juxtaposing those and thinking about what made Mother Teresa a great human being, what made Jesus, what made Mary, what made all the saints great human beings, and trying to live for those values. instead of what the world tells us to, which is to amass, 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 get as much attention as possible, get as many reviews for your book as possible, those kinds of things.
Speaking of books, we're talking about Samantha Stevenson's book, The Bellbind Letters Inside the Devil's Plan for Your Motherhood, our Sunday visitor. We're not seeing any comments, so if you're leaving them, I'm so sorry. For some reason, they're not popping up. But if you're interested in asking Samantha anything, if you have any questions, comments you want to share, please do so, and hopefully they will show up for us. And I promise this time I'll go back and read them if they don't. But usually this works pretty good. So I'm thinking you're just being quiet tonight, our our faithful listeners, which we're so thrilled again to have you with us. Um, right. So I think let's move
Pregnancy.
on. Pregnancy, yes, please. Chapter 10, letter 10.
Mm-hmm.
My condolences on your patient's recent conception. I'm sorry. That's the funniest opening line ever.
Yeah, it is. But I think, sadly, I think people say that. Like, I think people feel that way a lot of the time in the world, even when in families. And I'm not just talking about people who are having unplanned pregnancies or struggling or secular. I know I love her so, 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 so much, but my husband's grandma told us stop having kids, like don't have any more kids. She kept saying, she would say to him, "Don't you get that girl pregnant?" Like, and I know a few other people who have a number of children and different sentiments in their family of when they get pregnant again, even if they're happy and they're like, "I'm so happy I'm pregnant." Like, parents are like, "Really?" So yes, I think it's funny and chilling, but also I think it might be some people's reality. Sad.
Yes. Yes, sadly, I agree. Um, so just the writing is just so incredible. Every instance of the enemy's image come to bear should be at once abhorred and disavowed. And I was like, wow, sadly, too many do. I wrote in my comments on the side. Uh,
We do that to each other too, though. Like,
mm,
we should always reverence. I think this is probably totally misquoting, but I think C.S. Lewis at one point said that the most holy thing that we encounter in our lives is another human being face to face. He probably didn't say that. I'm probably butchering it, but I do think that whatever I am remembering, there is a crumb of truth in that. That there's something. Thomas Merton did say, "What a shame it is that we miss being able to encounter one another, walking around not knowing we're shining like the sun."
oh,
That one is a real quote. So he had this beautiful spiritual experience where he was just standing in the middle of a city, looking around, and then suddenly saw everyone the way that Jesus sees us,
wow.
as precious, as shining like the sun. I love that language. And I mean, the enemy hates that. He hates us. Every single one of us does not want us to, hates God, does not want us to bear his image in the world.
No, not at all. So, Samantha, we have somebody new tonight that wasn't here when we talked about what Bellbind and
Ah,
Boomslang. I
okay.
think it totally needs to be reset because it's so
Okay.
cool.
Okay. So, Bellbind is this weed that's on the cover. This is the Bellbind flower. It's very beautiful, deceptively so, because this weed is vicious. It is demonic. I have battled this weed in my garden. I've talked to other people close by who they know who are gardeners, and they're like, "I hate that weed. It's the worst weed." So it has these deep, 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 deep tap roots. So even if you pull it all up on the surface, it's always there, like deep down. It can go like 30 feet down in the soil and it will
Crazy.
just be there waiting for you. If you pull it, it's like a hydra. When you cut off its head, it just grows more heads. So you pull it out, it just becomes more vigorous. And I don't know if you can see it through the computer, but it has these tendrils that wrap its way around your crops, and it cuts productivity by like 50%. So Bellbind is this demon that gets to you. And even if you try to like weed it out and pull it out on your own without the help of God, it just keeps coming back, is buried even when you scratch the surface and see like it's not there anymore. There are just these seeds of concupiscence in us that keep coming back and coming back. And then I don't think the question was who is Bellbind. That was who is Bellbind. But boomslang is an African tree snake, and the venom of this snake is so potent. So we've got the snake imagery there, right? The snake bites you. You can't just have anti venom. You actually have to get a full blood transfusion. So thinking about this snake viciously biting at us and then having to have blood from someone else come in and purify you and save you. That's like, when I found that out when I was researching, we were trying to find good names. I was like, that's it. I'm sold. Like that's the one. There was a
Yeah.
little bit of debate over it because I guess the word also appears in Harry Potter, but I'm like, she doesn't. It's a real thing outside of Harry Potter. She didn't make it up. She doesn't. Respect to J.K. Rowling. She doesn't own the word, and the symbolism is too good. So
The
anyway.
symbolism is crazy good. That's why I know the question was only for the Bellbind, but I'm like, no, you have to explain the boom slang too, because I was telling my husband about that. He's like, that is so cool. He's like, I thought I knew every snake. Huh. And I also, that's interesting because this person Liz is asking the question. She lives in the same area that I do, and I was thinking, oh, we don't have this here. It must just be out in your area, but apparently it's everywhere. So
Oh,
that's another good in right. Like so, sin and the demons are everywhere, just like this awful plant.
yeah, it's a really tough one. But even if you haven't encountered this one in your area, any of the weeds that have those rhizomes, those roots that go and they spread through their roots. Usually if you can pull something out by the roots, you got it. But this one you can't because you just have to keep digging and digging deeper and deeper, and it's vicious.
I wrote a note here that I meant to research. Maybe you know, Samantha. I think I read somewhere that the DNA of the child that you give birth to remains with the mother forever. Does that
Yeah,
sound?
it goes both ways. Actually, it's called fetal microchimerism, and there will be cells from every every child that you've carried. So you don't even need to have given birth. If you have miscarried, your baby is still with you, literally physically, forever. There's actually one really striking and kind of sad example is they found male cells inside of a woman who was not a mother because she had conceived and aborted a baby boy. And what actually ended up happening is the fetus does, people call the fetus a parasite, but it is not, absolutely not true. The fetus will send help, the placenta will send help to distressed areas of the mother's body. So this woman actually had a serious liver problem and was healed by the cells of the baby that she aborted. And so I think that's one that's really sad, but it's also really beautiful to think about the physical intimacy of mother and child, and maternal cells also stay with children as well. So yeah, it's pretty
I knew,
amazing what our bodies do.
I knew you'd know that. This is probably why the Holy Spirit's like, you don't have to look it up. Samantha's got your back. She's
I'm working. I'm working on a book proposal right now that, well, actually it's out on submission. That has a devotion based on, it's like about embodied motherhood, and there is one on fetal microchimerism and how these cells stay with us. Yeah, so hopefully, God
oh,
willing, someone wants to pick that devotional up, and then
like
I can share it with
that's
all of you.
well, that's so powerful. Thank you, Holy Spirit. That is, I don't even know what made me think of that particular thing, whatever it was I was reading.
Now, was it in
Um,
the book?
it wasn't in the book. I think it was
I
just
don't
the
think I
idea of
knew.
motherhood and just something about it. Just, I think maybe it was like, never let her contemplate the monumental work she does in building a new creature
Mhm.
as the end for which she sacrifices. Only allow her to despair of her condition as she would a cruel punishment and long to be relieved of it.
Mhm.
And I mean, there are days when you're pregnant where you're just like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
I was so sick. I had a ectopic that nearly took my life, and I had to have emergency surgery. And then the next one was a fetal demise, which is a fancy way of saying a miscarriage. And it is difficult, like which we'll see in the next chapter. Like you do live in fear the whole time you're pregnant. And then they leave your body, and then you're still in fear, and then they leave your house, and you're still in
There's
fear.
more.
Like, you never stop worrying as a mother, because it's like, I don't know when's the first person to say this, but it's like your heart walking outside of your body
Mhm.
is what being a mother feels like.
Totally, totally is. Yeah, for sure.
And I make the joke all the time, but I really do miss when they were babies in the car seat. I knew where they were, who they were with, and what they
Hmm.
were doing, and I knew they were safe. And the minute you unstrap them, you lose all control.
That's so true. That's so true.
So let's go on fertility, chapter 11.
Mhm. Yes.
So
So I have to give credit for my friend Grace here because she's the one who on page 75. She does a lot of work. She works for Natural Womanhood, which is an amazing website. Everybody should go check it out. She's the editor, but she does a lot of work on contraception and what it does to women's bodies and things like that. And so the demon here says about contraception, so pervasive is this pesticide that they've come to view their default fertility is switched off, as we so desperately wish it to be, and regard each new life as a pest who's broken through their rightful barriers. Grace is the one who originally said that to me, like our default in modernity is that we're default off, even though as human beings we're default on, assuming everything's working and we're healthy. Um, and then the idea about being a pest, I mean that's an argument that has been made at least since the 70s, probably before. There's this one argument in favor of abortion that talks about the babies being like seeds that drift through your screen and like start to grow in your house, and you should be able to pull the weeds of these people seeds out of your house because they've violate you put up it's not your fault, you put up a screen, they just happen to get through. So that's where that idea comes from. It's just an argument people have made in favor of abortion, but then I was extending it, thinking about how the enemy thinks about new life as pests.
and I know, like I didn't know when I was younger and put on birth control to control my periods, but then stayed on it because I was a young adult.
Yeah,
And
same story.
and I never knew about abortive fasciitis. Am I saying that
Yeah, we're a
right?
patient.
There it is. Yeah, and that you could abort and never even realize um, that you were doing something like that to your
Yeah.
body, to your child, and that was very hard. Like the guilt of that was very difficult to um, overcome.
Mm.
But that's where, going to confession, talking to a priest, um, that's really, and just understanding, like, you're not culpable for what you don't know. But for me, when
Mhm.
I did find out, that was the last day I ever took birth control. I was done
Yeah.
after that.
Well, it's so hard too because a lot of doctors don't even know or understand because in medical school textbooks they changed the definition of pregnancy so that it begins at implantation, and so what that means is you conceive and then it takes a while for a few days for the conceived child to make its way into the uterus and implant there. Well, because they changed that definition and say, oh, pregnancy doesn't start until implantation, then what one of the mechanisms, not the only one, but one of the mechanisms of contraception is it makes the uterus a hostile environment so that implantation can't occur. So they said, oh, well, pregnancy doesn't start until it implants. So it prevents pregnancy. But what it does is prevent implantation. So if you are a Christian, and I mean, this is true regardless. Human life scientifically begins at conception, but especially if you're a doctor and you have patients and they understand that new human life and what's important to your patient is this new human life begins at conception, then I think doctors need to be able to know that and communicate that to their patients so that they could just be like baseline informed on, if you think that your baby, it begins to exist when a new human life begins to exist at conception, then that time before implantation, that's still part of your baby's life. And so that's not then preventing pregnancy. That's preventing implantation, which is abortifacient. I don't know if that helps.
It does. It's just it's crazy, right? Like just our bodies are so complex. God has created just such this beautiful, complex um, mechanism that we get to be co-creators, right? And God lets us into this process,
Mm-hmm.
and yet the world has completely turned it on its side, and just that's where you again. That's why when you put it in the sense of a demon talking to another demon and seeing what the demons want to do inside of this beautiful thing that God allows us to be part of, it just makes so much sense that that's just the the deceptions that are going on. That's not the word I'm looking for, but all right. So our last chapter on household tasks.
Yeah, those are a challenge for me.
You and I have so much in common. I just kept circling things right. Yes, yep, yes, me too. Like I'm not even kidding. That's what my book says. Yes, yes, me too.
Oh, I love that.
It's like, yep, I'm with
Solidarity.
you. 100%. I do not have a domestic bone in my body, and I've always felt pretty inadequate and badly about that.
I have this favorite refrigerator mug that's by this brand. It's called Ann Tainter. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but they're like vintage images of a mother, holding a pie or something. So they got the vintage look, and then little captions. And mine says, I think she was vacuuming or something with like one of those old school vacuums. It says, I don't mean to brag, but I'm very mediocre at housekeeping. That just embodies me to a T. Um, so this chapter is more like personal confessions than
Oh
imagination
my
and
gosh.
fiction. But yeah, just the idea that I don't know, think the housework does not take as much time as I think it takes. It is not as hard as I think it is. I just build it up into this big thing in my mind, and then I procrastinate. And if I were to just do it and turn it into the turn the work into the prayer that it should be, then it would have this really beautiful potential to praise God. If I were to pray for my kids as I match their socks, thank God that we have socks for the kids. We don't have to worry about, we have shoes for the kids. Most of the time, if we can find them, we have them. It's a real. We spent a lot of time talking to Saint Anthony at our house. Um,
Yes, we do too.
but just the I know I really like cooking, but I know some people really struggle with cooking. But just to pray prayers of gratitude that we have this food to cook, that we have healthy people who can eat the food. There's so much opportunity for prayer in the mundane, and
Mm.
I just always struggle against it. Even though I know that, it's really hard.
I think that advice is just so precious and perfect. I was given that advice long, long time ago when my kids were little. Like, pray while you do the dishes again, that you have dishes, that you have food, that you have these beautiful babies, that this too shall pass.
Mm,
And in the blink of an eye, love that old quote, the days are long, but the years are short.
yes. Yeah.
It is now when my children are grown, like in the moment when I was exhausted and giving myself timeouts and letting them bang on the door so I just could calm down for 2 minutes and just kind of pull myself together. And it felt like Kevin couldn't get home quick enough. You could not have told me the years were going to be short at that moment. When the laundry was a pile, like just a mound, and the kids could hide in it, and the dust bunnies, like I were, having parties, and they're just, and I would say, and I'm not cleaning because my kids are more important than the cleaning, but there's plenty of time for both. I just don't like to do the other.
Yeah, but you know what though? There's so much. There's such a gift to be a part of women's groups that have many
Mm,
generations in them. I've been a part of a few different groups, and one of them is so great because we have that solidarity because we're all in the same stage of life, and that just fosters a certain kind of connection. But then I've been a part of a couple of other Bible studies where there's many ages, and being able to hear that perspective when my baby wouldn't ever stop crying, and I would look at other babies and be like, when is my baby going to be like that and it's not not crying, and I realized there's actually a time when I didn't know. I mean, I knew, I guess, but I couldn't consciously hold the fact that this period of time is going to end someday and it will be
mm.
different someday, and having other wise mothers to be able to speak wisdom into those moments and to just say, "Oh, I remember when I had my kids and I'd get them out of the bath and put them in the towel on them and read them stories, and they're looking back on the time that is a struggle for me really wistfully." And so this has just been a gift to hear from mothers
Yeah.
who have the perspective of having seen all the years, and grandmothers who have seen it all multiple times. It's
And
important to not stay isolated in our own little siloed,
absolutely.
same thinking communities, I think.
Again, the devil wants to isolate us. He doesn't want us to have that community. And there's nothing wrong, by the way, with feeling overwhelmed when you're a mom.
Mm,
And because it's hard. It is a hard job. It is can be overwhelming, especially when you have them little and you have them close in age, and
mhm.
you just feel torn in a million places, or you've just been through a week of one of them being ill and completely attached to you like a little I don't know, something that attaches to something else. The words are, it's 10
Barnacle?
o'clock here. Yeah, piranha. Like, yeah, just kind of stuck to you. Like, in my mind, I'm picturing that sucker fish on the side of the
Yeah.
tank.
Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But it's okay. But I too, and that's where I got that advice, by the way, Samantha, was when I was in Bible study with multi-age, and this woman was in her late 60s, and she was like, "Oh, I remember when." And then
Mm-hmm.
she's also the one who comes over and grabs the baby and cuddles it and gives you 2 minutes to, like, I can have a conversation with a human, and like, she's
Hmm.
enjoying that moment as much. So there's just so much wisdom poured into just, we're only on chapter 12, and I've already learned so much about myself and who I am and who I am in God, which is the most important reason to do spiritual reading, is that we learn who God is and who we are in him. Again, I promise this time I will go back and look to see if there's any questions. I thank you all so much for joining us. Samantha, that went by so fast.
Yeah, it did. It did. The hour was short.
That's very funny. And the reading is short too. It's been I when you see like you're going to read 6 chapters, like first I was like, "Oh, that's a lot, Samantha, that you want to cover." But you're right, they're really quick. And for Lent, this has been the perfect one a day read. And then here we are talking on the seventh day. So we will be back again next Wednesday with Samantha Stevenson to continue our Catholic Bomb Lenten Book Club, the Bellbind Letters Inside the Devil's Plan for Your Motherhood. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to being with you next week. God bless.